This video is based on the technical analysis of Nvidia, and as you guys can see, we're on the monthly chart. So what we'll do in this video is identify the market structure of Nvidia, important market patterns, key support and resistance levels, candlestick patterns, as well as levels at which we should be looking for those potential buying and selling opportunities, right? So without wasting any further time, let's get straight into the actual technical analysis. And on the monthly chart, we can see that what we see at this point is that we have this huge W structure which has a neckline at that point. And you guys by now know that whenever we have these W structures, ideally we want to see price breaking to the upside of that neckline, coming back to the neckline to give it a test. And generally speaking, where we have that neckline is where we look for those further buying opportunities, especially if the neckline aligns with any key numbers that we have in regards to the Fibonacci retracement tool. So what else do we see on the monthly chart at this point in time? I don't see much, but I will head down to the weekly chart. However, before I do so, I just also want to point out that if you look at these two candlesticks over here, we can see that the market is starting to reject those levels, and it indicates that we may indeed potentially see the market move further down to around this level. And at this level, as I said, is where we will look for those potential buying opportunities. Anyway, let's head down to the weekly chart and see what's happening down there. And just to recap, guys, remember on the monthly chart we spoke about how we have this huge W structure, as you guys can see, and we said that ideally we would love to see the market from where it is move further down to around this level, and at this level is where we should be looking for those potential buying opportunities. Now that we're on the weekly chart, what do we see? On the weekly chart, we can see that we have this candlestick over here, and what it is a bearish candlestick, right, with a small body and quite a long lower wick. And what it tells us is that at the bottom where that wick ends, there's a lot of liquidity stuck there. And as you guys know by now, liquidity is actually money that needs to be triggered by the market, and we also know that the market will always go to where the money is. So it is quite possible that we may see a situation where the market from where it is moves further down to grab that liquidity, and perhaps moves even further down to test the neckline, which is over here, of that huge W structure that we spoke about, right? Anyway, what else do we see in regards to the weekly chart? At this point, I don't see much, and the question at this point is now actually a good time to be buying Nvidia? In my very, very humble opinion, I would say no. Why do I say so? That is because in as far as the buying and selling of stocks go, the name of the game is buy low, right, and sell high. Buy low and sell high. You want to buy at these low levels, and then when price gets to the high levels, that's when you should be looking for those selling opportunities. So at this point, myself personally, I'll be looking for selling opportunities to around this level, and at this point is where again I would look for those buying opportunities. Anyway, from here I'm just going to head down to the daily chart, and let's see what's happening on the daily chart. Here we are on the daily chart. On the daily chart, we can see that we have some very, very interesting price action. We have a gap over here, right? And gaps are very much similar to liquidity candlesticks in that they too are carrying a lot of liquidity. And what this tells us is that this gap needs to be filled at some stage, and we will see in the future a situation where the market comes down to around that level to grab that liquidity or to close that gap, and then we may potentially see the market move further up. And I hope that you guys can see that this gap over here aligns more or less where we have, rather with where we have that neckline of that W structure, and it ties in with how I said earlier that ideally we want to see the market come to around this area, and at this area is where we should be looking for those buying opportunities, right? Anyway, what else do we see in regards to the daily chart? On the daily chart, as much as I said to you guys that we want to see price push further down to around this level, I hope you guys can see also that we have actually an M structure over there, right? It's a small M structure, and it has a neckline at that level. And just like with W formations, whenever we have these M structures, we want to see price breaking to the bottom side of that neckline, heading back to the neckline to give it a test. And at that neckline is generally where we look for those potential selling opportunities, especially if the neckline aligns with any key numbers that we have in regards to the Fibonacci retracement tool, right? So what else do we see? So as much as we have this M structure over here, I hope you guys can see that if it happens, we would also have what is, if I can just draw it properly, a head and shoulders pattern, right? I hope you guys can see that. And that's if the market from where it is heads back to the neckline of this M structure, right? We would then have a head and shoulders pattern where this would be the left shoulder, this would be the head, and potentially the right shoulder would be at this level, and that would add as confluence in as far as looking for those potential selling opportunities goes. I hope you guys can see that, right? What else do we see in regards to the daily chart? Another thing that I see in regards to the daily chart is that we have what seems to be a channel over there, and what's probably happening right now is that a lot of traders and investors are actually waiting for this channel to be broken to the bottom side, and once that happens, they will look for those selling opportunities, and their take profit will be around this level again. And at this level is where I said we would look for those potential buying opportunities. Actually, if you think about it, a lot of institutions and investors are actually waiting for the market to come back to this level, right? And at this level, I believe that a lot of them will come in and push the market even higher, right? So what else do we see at this point? I don't see much, but I also want to point out that we have another candlestick over here, right? And what it is a bearish candlestick, which has a small body and quite a long lower wick. It's very much similar to the one that I spoke about on the weekly chart, and it too is carrying a lot of liquidity down there. So guys, there is plenty of scope for the market to move further down. Why do I say so? Number one, remember, we have that huge W structure that I spoke about, and we have price breaking to the upside of that neckline. And I said to you guys that we want to see the market in the future coming back to the neckline to give it a test, right? That's number one. Number two, we have a gap over here, right? And gaps are liquidity areas, and the market needs to go down to the liquidity areas to grab that liquidity, as liquidity is money. And at this point, we may again look for those buying opportunities, right? The third point is that we have those two candlesticks that I spoke about that are carrying all of that liquidity. So there is plenty of scope for the market from where it is to move further down, right? The fourth point actually is the fact that we have a smaller M structure over here. It's not really visible properly in regards to the daily chart, but as we move down to the H4 chart, it'll be better visible, right? So we have plenty of reason to be looking for those potential selling opportunities. Remember, also spoke about how we may potentially get a head and shoulders pattern, right, where the market moves down in this manner, right? So there is plenty of scope for the market to move further down. However, in order for us to sell, we need confirmation and confluence. We should not just be selling, we need confirmation and confluence. Anyway, let's head down to the H4 chart and see what's happening down there. And here we are on the H4 chart. And just to recap, remember on the daily chart I spoke about how we may get a head and shoulders pattern, as you guys can see. And we can see that in regards to the H4 chart, the head and shoulders pattern seems to be forming itself, with this being the left shoulder, this being the head, and this being potentially the right hand shoulder. And if it does happen, because in my very humble opinion it would have started at this point, I would love to see it end at that point in line with where it started. And this also ties in with the fact that I said within this range over here, we should be looking for those potential buying opportunities. So there is plenty of scope for the market to move down, right? And if I can just zoom in a bit, we can see that that M structure that I spoke about is better visible here, and it has a neckline at that level. I hope you guys can see that, right? And we can also see that price broke to the bottom side of that neckline and then went back to the neckline to give it a test. And if the current H4 candle closes bearish, I would say that we have confirmation and confluence in as far as looking for those potential selling opportunities goes, right? However, having said that, we're not just gonna sell. I believe that we need to look for further reasons for why at that level we should be looking for those selling opportunities. We need further reasons and further confluence, right? Anyway, what else do we see on the H4 chart? On the H4 chart, I can see that we also have another gap over here. I hope you guys can see that. And as I said, guys, it's very much similar to the gap that I spoke about at this point over here, in that it too is carrying a lot of liquidity there. And as I said, liquidity is money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another. But in as far as buying or selling opportunities go at this point, I don't see any. But my bias is to look for selling opportunities in and around this area. And if I do find any good opportunities, my take profit will be around this area. And around this area, I will be looking for those potential buying opportunities.